Our research question to guide our project was, how does the royal family in Saudi Arabia maintain power? To answer our question, we broke it down into multiple parts that we could then explore through our research. We wanted to know how the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia originally declared power, how the legal system is organized, the nature of the Saudi economy in relation to the stranglehold on power by the House of Saud, and how the recent Arab Spring movements affected the country's governmental systems. We concluded by looking at the present and into the future as the House of Saud has seen their political power challenged.
Ibn Saud, born in 1880, was exiled with his family to Kuwait as an infant. He returned to Arabia in 1901 in an attempt to reclaim his family's lands that were previously lost. For years, he fought in Arabia as a tribal leader against other tribes, conquering more and more area. According to Leslie McLaughlin in her book Ibn Saud, Founder of a Kingdom, Ibn Saud had to employ many skills and extensive resources in order to take control of the region from the various tribal groups who would not easily surrender. Saud used his background in leadership and used diplomatic methods when he could. In 1932, Ibn Saud formally declared the convergence of his dominion under the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Thus, the power structure and monarchy was developed and openly declared in a united Saudi Arabia. Ibn Saud was married 22 times. The best estimate of the amount of children he had is 36 sons and 21 daughters. Anyone would guess that this massive amount of heirs is difficult to navigate when it comes time for power to change hands. The descendants are divided into 35 family branches, as the male descendants are relevant in the context of power relations. Some of Saud's children are not qualified for the throne, as their mothers are not Arab. Throughout generations since the rule of Ibn Saud, the succession of the throne is a hurdle that constantly wields the threat of destabilization of power. This is because internal power struggles and quarrels between the multiple branches of the family. According to Jean Asherman's book, Doing Business in Saudi Arabia, the contemporary application of Islamic law, Saudi Arabia is the closest thing in modern day to an Islamic state. In Saudi Arabia, the Sharia is not the law in the Western sense of the word. Rather, it is the correct life path that is to be followed. The king's role is also important. The king is declared imam, who is the political and religious leader. In this way, the primary authority figure combines the power of the government and the power of religion in order to command obedience. To understand this construction of power is to understand the House of Saud's claim to be the rightful rulers of Saudi Arabia. This information about legal organization is also important in relation to business deals between Saudi Arabia and other countries around the world. The oil industry is a major part of global business and foreign relations for Saudi Arabia.
A quote that is often referred to oil is that it is as vital to human existence as water. Saudi Arabia's Ghawar oil field is the largest onshore reserve of oil in the world, and the Safaniya field is the largest offshore oil reserve in the world. The petroleum sector of the economy of Saudi Arabia makes up 45% of its total GDP and is the largest exporter of petroleum on the planet. The government-owned Saudi Arabian Oil Company, or Saudi Aramco, has been owned by one person for the last 38 years, the Saudi Arabian king. Saudi Aramco is the official Saudi Arabian oil company and owns both of the largest onshore and offshore oil fields in the world. It pumps about 1 out of every 9 barrels of the world's oil. Saudi Aramco was actually first established as a joint Saudi-American company, hence the acronym Aramco, which stands for Arabian American Oil Company. By 1980, however, in rejection to the Western ideals and American relations, the Saudi government completes its buyout of the company and takes full control. The Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman announced in late 2016 that he's considering listing shares of the state-owned company and selling 5% of those shares to the public. About 80 years ago, American oil prospectors set up camp in Saudi Arabia, and the U.S. begins diplomatic relations with the newfound kingdom. King Abdulaziz, despite backlash citing that the invitation of the Americans into their country was un-Islamic, allows U.S. companies to develop Saudi oil resources. In 1973, King Faisal was pressured by the Arab League to use Saudi oil as a weapon against the West, and then orders that Saudi oil be taken off the market. There's a massive oil shortage around the world. Once the fourth king of Saudi Arabia comes to power, King Khalid, hundreds of billions of revenue pours into the kingdom. With this increase in enormous wealth for the royal family comes massive corruption. Deals made between the royal family and foreign investors were riddled with fraud, bribery, and too large of promises. Today, the most severe challenge the Saudi royal family faces in regards to oil is the Oil for Security alliance with the United States. The CEO of Aramco has promised that the company aims to increase Saudi Arabia's total discovered reserves from 800 billion barrels to 900 billion. The majority of the 100 billion barrels that are not yet discovered is crude oil and cannot be reached with current technology. This promise is a government action that exceeds reality for the kingdom. As oil prices sink, the question is whether or not the world will keep buying Saudi oil and thus supporting the royal family and Aramco. The International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, predicts 0% economic growth for the kingdom, and there is increasingly high pressure on the government to curb its carbon emissions and obey environmental limitations. The kingdom's oil industry is now at odds with the U.S.'s new shale oil industry, as the American government can rely less on Saudi oil. The continued shadiness of the truth behind Aramco and the Saudi control of oil has led to foreign investors at odds with the king. The crown prince, the heir to the throne, is a promised change to the royal family, in accordance with the social changes already occurring in the kingdom. The 75-year alliance between the United States and the royal family of Saudi Arabia has been characterized by one simple arrangement: the American demand for Saudi oil and the Saudi demand for American firepower, hence the Oil for Security alliance. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia buys more American weaponry than any other nation. This Oil for Security alliance is eroding and puts into question the future of the powerful royal family of Saudi Arabia. It is no doubt that their power derives from their control of the Saudi oil markets. The royal family is the richest royal family in the world, and their estimated wealth is over $1.7 trillion. But as foreign markets find alternative sources of oil and the legitimacy of the Saudi royal family weakens due to their human rights violation, corruption, and opulent spending, their wealth may become less of a barrier to change. Almost all of the power is now in the hands of the crown prince, which is also the defense minister of Saudi Arabia. Keeping Saudi interests at the forefront of his mind, he has taken actions that have severed relations with neighboring countries in the region, including Yemen and Qatar. Amidst all of this, the Arab Spring has brought continued challenges to the House of Saud.
In 2011, Arab Spring protests broke out across the Middle East. While the protests were rampant in many countries trying to oust authoritarian leaders, Saudi Arabia's royal family took steps to ensure that their power in the country and across the Middle East was maintained. Saudi Arabia sent National Guard troops to Egypt to help repel protesters. When the Egypt government had new elections following the Arab Spring, the Saudis spent millions of dollars trying to influence these elections and the votes in the country. Saudi Arabia does not hold back in using force to keep power. King Abdullah, who was king of Saudi Arabia from 2005 until 2015, weakened the influence of the religious officials in Saudi Arabia to make the royal family more powerful. The family's use of the military, money, and fear tactics aimed at Shiite Muslims helped to keep the Al Saud family ruling and not fall victim to protesters as other countries did in the Arab Spring of 2011. But the Saudis did offer reforms to appease any potential dissent to their rule. They promised to fight corruption, build more houses, and donate more money for the social safety net and elections to local races. This was a needed response to vast protests against authoritarian regimes in Saudi Arabia and in the region.
After 10 years as king, King Abdullah died at the age of 90 in 2015. The family's power remained, and it was considered a peaceful transition of power with no significant policy changes from Abdullah. Mohammed bin Nayef, before his ousting from his position, was a crown prince in line for the throne. His young age, being around 55, made him a new leader for Saudi Arabia. What is important to note about the Al Saud family is their desire to project stability. In a region with the Arab Spring, Syrian civil war, and Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the Al Saud family likes to promote Saudi Arabia as a stable monarchy. On one side of the kingdom, Yemen is in the midst of a brutal civil war, and on the other side of the kingdom, Iraq has been in turmoil ever since the U.S. invasion of 2003. The fear of Shiites, part of the reason the family stays in power, is aided by the Shiites fighting for power in Iraq, a majority Shiite country. Part of the power of the Al Saud family is the ability to promote strength, stability, and is part of the reason the family has ruled part of the Arabian Peninsula for the last couple of decades.
The Saudi royal family, often a symbol of strength and stability, had some chaos in recent months. Last year, Mohammed bin Nayef, who had been named the crown prince in 2015, was removed from his post after 2 years. King Salman, who took over after King Abdullah's death in 2015, put his son, the young Mohammed bin Salman, who was 31 when he was appointed as the new crown prince. In 2018, the Saudi Arabia-U.S. relations became strained. A longtime U.S. ally, the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, put tension on the U.S.-Saudi relationship. The CIA reported that the journalist was tortured and killed under the direction of the crown prince. MBS, as Mohammed bin Salman is often referred to, was supposed to represent a new, more open Saudi government, but seems to be falling in line with his family's policy on suppressing dissent, even resorting to torture and murder.
Since Ibn Saud's rule of what is now Saudi Arabia, the country has undergone many princes and often the difficult transfer of power, which has become more smooth in recent years. The Saudi government gets its money and power from oil. This natural resource, and a non-renewable one, has become the center of the Saudi economy. Oil and the revenue from oil is how the government maintains power internally and abroad. They also use the fears of others, like Shiites in Iran and Iraq, to cement their rule as the proper family to rule over Saudi Arabia. Its money, military, and proposed reforms have helped avoid protests and avoid any major attempts to overthrow the Al Saud family, even during the Arab Spring of 2011. In 2018, the Saudis face a test as to who they will be and whether the leadership will modernize or remain with questionable human rights records and the crushing of dissent. Thank you.